I don't see. Okay, I see, Ryan. We're going live. 1, 2, 3.
Hello and welcome to Presence Practice with Poonam and Parker, and we have a special guest, Ryan Ostheimer. Am I saying that right, Ryan?
Yes, Ostheimer.
Ostheimer. So what's wonderful about this session today is that we're using a different application in Zoom, so we are able to see who is commenting. And so we welcome any of your questions and or any of your wisdom that you may offer to somebody else's questions. So I'm going to bring up the recording right now and mute me. Okay, so there we are. Here we are. So in the meantime, we welcome beautiful friends. We're so glad to be here. And while we are here without a question, I thought we could speak about time and suspending time. It's a beautiful practice, and it has the same effect as dropping labels. So when I set timers, it's wonderful because when you set a timer, you can put the timer away and sit in a space of no time. And it's a beautiful practice that I invite all of you, if you haven't already, to join us with that. This comes from a question I had in a session with someone who said it feels like time is frozen, that they're in this time of self-isolation, and it feels like time has been frozen for them, which I think is a beautiful experience, to just have no time, no date, no day of the week. And so we have a life and we break it down into days with tasks in the days. Even when we are engaged in activity, we can still rest in between those tasks in a place of spaciousness, suspended time where there is none. There's no day. Ryan, have you practiced timelessness, dropping time?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's sort of it comes along with this practice, right, of learning to quiet our minds, which so often wants to operate in time, past and future. You know, even you have the long-term past and future, like what happened years ago and what may happen in a few years. But then you can really bring time in to directly to this present moment, to even 5 seconds ago. It's now past. It's now gone. And what's going to happen in 5 seconds? I don't know. I mean, it's just the future, and we stay anchored in this moment. And I definitely use the timer thing quite a bit as well, because it's so nice to not have to think about it at all. You don't have to stress. You don't have to be like, oh, I got to make sure I remember to make it to the Q&A later today. You just set a timer and nothing to think about. But the thing I find really interesting about time too is really paying attention to the feeling that time carries, because it has this invisible hand that pushes and pulls us, and it's just this constant underlying feeling like we're not supposed to be where we are right now. We're supposed to be in our vacation in a couple of weeks, or we're supposed to be I don't know. We're always just mentally projecting ourselves anywhere besides this moment, besides here. And I found catching time, catching that feeling of the impatience, little bits of impatience that sneak in when I'm like, oh, this light needs to turn red faster, or I need to hurry or I'm going to be late. You know, all these various little thoughts of time. They're little bits of suffering, and they can add up too. So, yeah, time's a big subject.
That's a nice observation. And so when we drop it, we can stay in that spaciousness. And these tools that we have, using the timer for our breath and for allowing spaciousness in, and we use it for dropping labels and dropping the concept that there is time. If we just came on to this earth and there was no structure, no cultural structure or money or commodity, or if there was anything, sometimes I like to see it, like to feel how that feels to just be on this planet without any idea of anything other than the rhythms of the seasons and the rhythm of a day and the sun coming and the sun going and then the space in between. And there is so much spaciousness there. Very, very beautiful practice. Eileen said, I struggle with impatience myself and have come a long way. I'm glad that Ryan mentioned that word. It just came up today at home. I also experience this at times. I think it's a feeling of something should be other than how it is, right? And so it depends upon, I think, how big of, how much peeling away, how much unconsciousness needs to peel away as we begin an awakening process as a human being. It does that. And then it starts to, these layers, as we acknowledge them when we see them. But if we refuse to see them and run and hide and sink into, I'm above that, it's the spiritual arrogance sometimes that we see, or we're just, and then we stop growing and we're not on the path and we don't even know we're not on the path anymore. And so patience, if you see the impatience, that's really all we need to do. And it's such a beautiful liberation. And when we choose not to see this, or not choose, when we don't see it, because even when we fall off the path, it's still part of the whole journey. There's nobody doing anything wrong. But as soon as we begin to see the layers of unconsciousness, then they do just peel away on their own. They drop, they dissolve, they deconstruct all by themselves. So, oh, Grace is saying hello to everyone. Hey, Grace.
Hello, Grace.
Hello, everyone.
I wanted to say something about the impatience. What I feel is if we don't inhabit the body, like the more we are out of our body and into the thinking mind, is when we experience impatience. So then the moment we experience a slight feeling of impatience, it's best to take some few conscious breaths. That's why Eckhart says just one conscious breath is enough. 2 or 3 is much more better, right? That's his guidance always. So inhabit your body. And the more you inhabit your body, the more the impatience ends. That's the key.
Yes.
Thank you.
Nice. Let me pin it together then. All 3 of us, the feedback is to hold the reality as it is, and the reality are the facts of the situation. The fact is that there's reactivity. Here's reactivity as it presents. If sometimes there's a message, but we can't hear it from the same energetic vibration of impatience. We can, otherwise it'll just be a complaining mind or narrow views or story making. So gentle as we go, and take some breath. take 2 or 3 deep breaths, as Poonam has suggested. And do you have some other bits of wisdom on this topic of patience, Ryan?
One thing that comes to mind, I hear quite often in coaching as well, is that we often have not only the first level of impatience, right? Like, I don't know, let's say in traffic or something. But then another one that's really sneaky is we have impatience for where we are in our spiritual practice. Yeah, and it's like we have an idea of where we're supposed to be, or, you know, being of spiritual mastery or something. It's this image of our advancement. And yeah, this mind pattern sneaks back in by saying, oh, how could you be losing the practice? You're supposed to be more advanced than this, which is another sneaky level of the impatience. And it's just the mind has snuck back in through a back door and reasserted itself. Whereas, like Poonam mentioned, if you really focus on the inner body and keeping that mind at bay, then these various levels or layers of impatience can't sneak back in. But, yeah, it's a big
Very
one.
nice. Yes, impatience with ourselves. Yeah, that's a really nice point. Impatience, and it's always a feeling that something is out of order. And so that's a nice one. That was a nice question, Eileen. Thank you so much. So let's see. Sometimes I jot down notes to really great points or questions that people make.
I just wanted to read, Eileen says, yes, that's what I did tonight. Took 3 breaths to try and get out of that impatient mind. So she is applying the presence practice techniques. Thank you, Eileen.
Yeah. How did that work out for you, Eileen? Was it 2 or 3 deep breaths and then a return to the body?
It's perfect for sure, because the catching is really the power. She's catching that it's there.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah,
it's hard to catch sometimes, though.
Yes, yes. I recently was working on another sneaky one, which is a desire to feel understood. And it's okay to not be understood. Sometimes or a lot of times when we're begin peeling away unconsciousness, our impulse for things changes, and that's not always understood. So if people are unconscious, then they're never going to understand what it is that you are doing or what you meant by something, or how it'll be perceived through their experiences and all that unconsciousness, and that's insanity. And so the feeling of being misunderstood is that same kind of insanity. It's the same thing. There's no reason for anyone to really understand us. So it's all the same. It's you know, it's been important, I think, for my growth to absolutely make sure that I see these things as they come up and see any bits of irritation or impatience. It's so and to be good with where we're at. If we think so, and also to recognize the difference between preferences. Like, for instance, Eckhart says that when he's in a grocery store, he would prefer it. He has a preference that people not approach him, but people approach him, and then he's great with it. So he has a preference with it, and then but if someone does approach him, he embraces it and says yes to it completely. And that is that is the work right there. That's what such a great example for all of us to see it. And then sometimes there's a message that comes from it. And we can hear that if we return to stillness before we start listening again. It's a much more loving and kind and wise solution comes in. Really nice.
I think Madhuri had a statement.
Let's see. I'm not keeping up here, Pina. Let's see. Only that which you.
She says, I have a question. If someone seeks your advice and you offer it, and the person doesn't apply but come back seeking advice on the same topic, if you draw their attention on their inability to apply the advice in the past, their pain body gets activated and your silence is not taken in a nice way. What do you do then? And I'll put it in the chat as well in Zoom.
Okay,
So
nice.
both of you can see it.
Oh, I
That
love
was my
this person so much. And this is a wonderful thing. And this is the same thing Eileen was, the same thing. If you draw attention on their inability to apply the advice in the past, well, that is the past. So the whole idea of patience is irrelevant. We don't need any patience because we've already dropped the past. We only really have this moment. And if we say the same thing 3 times or similar, it's just the present moment when it's set in. So if you're drawing their attention, what is the impulse for drawing their attention to their inability to apply the advice is the question. And if somebody, the pain body gets activated, and it will, maybe for the rest of your life, someone gave Eckhart the finger in traffic. You can be completely conscious and still activate pain bodies out in the world. There's nothing to do. Their pain body is their pain body. There's someone's pain body, it gets activated. Leave them alone with it. Sometimes it depends on the situation. You can bring in some levity. None of this is all that serious. That's another great tool. Humor, levity around things. None of this. Meditation isn't that serious. This work isn't that serious. Falling off the path isn't that serious. Falling back asleep, still not that serious. Because when we take a seriousness, a serious tone to things, then our views start to narrow. There's no humor or levity. We lose the lightness. So you may lose a little bit of consciousness, but if you're on this path, you cannot lose all of your consciousness. That peace that calls you home you've already answered the door to it. So gentleness, and allow people to come with the same question over and over again. What people do isn't our business with it. What say you, Poonam and Ryan, on this topic? I like this topic.
Ryan,
it's like an overarching theme of
Ryan, go ahead, and then I'll have something to say.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good one, and it's something I think we all kind of run into as we get farther down the path. And for one, you definitely want to honor when someone asks you, then it's time to maybe somehow gently point where they have reactivity or where they have ego, but there's an art to that. You have to be really, really conscious of what you're feeling in that moment. That if you're choosing to reflect something that they missed, you have to be very, very conscious of how you're feeling in that moment. If there's any feeling of like I told you so, or superiority or anything like that, then their ego is going to really react to it, and you get this really intense, non-productive, debate or argument versus really being of help. So paying attention to how you're feeling is always primary, especially whenever you're pointing at where somebody slipped, because those are very sensitive subjects, especially for those that are deep in bits of ego, where any sort of criticism is taken very personally and negatively. Um, and the well, there's something else I was going to mention in that. Also, it's always important. I've heard Eckhart mention too that like when someone asks a question, just try to only answer specifically that question and not give them a bunch of extra stuff that you think may be helpful, because too much can also overwhelm someone and then they can have that reaction and take it negatively or personally too. Um, and you know, if we're really wanting to be of help, then we just have to work with where they're at and what can we really say that will be most beneficial to them. And it's a very gentle art to being able to point at someone's ego without them feeling like it's personal, you know, and getting super reactive and intense. But then if they do get intense, like Parker mentioned, then it's our practice to not react to their reactivity, which actually can bring us a whole new level of mastery. When you can interact with somebody who's in a pain body and it just goes right through you. There's no reaction in you, but not just outwardly, but inwardly. You know, I mean, if we're smiling on the outside, but inside we're like constricted and angry and upset, then that's where we still have practice, right? Because the true mastery is when it happens and it just goes through you, and you're like, okay, and you don't take anything personal, and then it dissolves, you know, and they are on their path. You are on yours, they are on theirs. Everybody has their timing. So.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
I would break it down. I would say uh, you offered advice. The person doesn't apply the advice. The reason why the person does not apply the advice is their level of consciousness is not at the same as your level of consciousness. So they don't know how to apply the advice, right? So they may just drop it. They may forget what exactly was the context of the advice, right? So that's breaking that second portion down. They didn't apply it. So don't get frustrated that they didn't apply it. It's just that their level of consciousness did not. I mean, 4 years of responding to people's posts, there are quite a few times that people ask the same question, and the same people ask the same question, especially about that where it the polarities where Eckhart says it also creates the other polarity. Everybody will ask me the same question again. What does he mean that it creates the other polarity, right? So don't be frustrated. This is so consciousness, pure consciousness answered a question, right? That that present moment is over. Now comes again the same person, second time question, the same question, but this is a new experience. Pure consciousness is interacting with the consciousness in the other and answering the question. It may take 100 times to answer the question. How many times has Eckhart talked about presence, awareness, surrender? I mean, he talks and talks and talks. He spent like 20 years talking about surrender, presence, awareness, deep I. He'll try different words. It's just the same thing. So, and then the fact that you're detecting and saying that their pain body got it activated is a judgment. So no longer are you pure consciousness. The thinking mind has taken over and is judging the other. The moment we judge, the other arises. There's a talk called You Are the Sky, where Eckhart says, when we judge and we say their pain body got activated, then the flaw, we just magnify the flaw. The other arises and the flaw like it's almost like he gives a Star Trek I don't remember the episode where Picard says don't direct your phasers at that entity because the entity grows when you put the phaser on it, right? He tells his crew don't put the phasers on them. So that's how judgment activates all the more, the other arises and becomes bigger. So that's why Go meditate. Don't judge them. When they answer the question, when they ask the question, answer it again. Like, be in presence. If you don't have presence, don't answer the question because it won't be the right response, right? Wait until you have enough presence. That's all I had. Thank you.
Very nice. Let's take a moment here for deep breaths so we can sense that presence in the space right now between us. I hope I'm saying this right. Is it Madhuri?
Madhuri.
Madhuri followed up with this and said, I realized the person's pain body got activated because the person shouted and was angry and was cursing himself, herself. Can you be in the presence of somebody having a pain body attack? Can you be in the presence of that and be non-reactive, truly non-reactive, not playing a role of non-reactivity, but to sit still and to just allow it to unfold. Allow it to unfold. Sometimes you may want to, Kim Eng was talking about having a pain body attack, and Eckhart said, I'm leaving now. And he got up and left the apartment. And then later she called him and said, I'm finished now. And he said, okay, I'm coming home. And it was dropped. So it's a beautiful practice. I mean, I think all of us have been around someone that is clearly having a pain body attack. If there is consciousness in them, you can say, is that your pain body? And I've had them say, yes, I'm having a pain body attack right now. And, or just, you have to sense it. You can't, there's not a, here's the set of rules. It really depends upon who's in front of you. Some people, you can bring levity to it, levity to the pain body. Don't also take their stuff so seriously. We can just allow people to do as they do, and we're going to do as we do. And can we sit with a pain body? Oftentimes, a pain body attack has a feel of adolescence. So there's just like a certain, it's like a temper tantrum-y kind of feel. So there's that part of them that is whatever triggered the reactivity isn't at a place of maturing. So you're not going to be upset with that. Would you sit and cross your arms at a flower that hasn't been bloomed yet? It's not time. It's not out of order. So I love, in summary of this, I love what Ryan was saying about, essentially you were saying, Ryan, check your impulse about giving this feedback. If there's impatience with you, if there's any thought that runs through your head that's unconscious that says, they just asked this question. Maybe I should just reframe it. Just leave it alone. It's their present moment. If they come 100 times, it's the same as all of us. If we break our vows 1,000 times to the present moment, we can still come back. It's not lost. You haven't lost. You don't lose. When we lose consciousness, there's enough consciousness already in you to say, oh, look at me, I fell down here on the ditch. Let me get up on the path with my friends who will help me. And that's what we are here, our friends. And you're our friend too. And we're grateful that you're here.
Parker, I posted the next question from Neelam. It's on the Zoom chat.
Oh, thank you, Poonam.
You're welcome.
The question is, I think I'm one of those who keeps asking one question again and again. I'm still struggling with the idea of surrendering. Maybe because the general teachings or worldly teachings focus on try harder, you won't try hard, or you give up, or you will fail. This sounds very similar to the question that we had about discipline. How much more discipline do I need to have to further my path? And discipline is completely different from deep allowing. Brian, you speak a lot about surrender and deep allowing. Would you like to answer this question first?
Sure. Well, one, if you know that you're one that asks this over and over again, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up for that. It's just, it's good that you're asking it again. If you're being honest that you didn't get it, and then you're open to hearing it, something deeper, and that's always a beautiful thing. We can get stuck in the idea that we do know something, and we aren't willing to admit to ask the question, and we stop going deeper. So nothing wrong with questioning things over and over. And you're struggling with surrender, so there's already a knowing there, there's awareness there, and that's also a big level of progress in and of itself. And then, another piece of this is just being in this moment. Ask yourself, are you in a state of surrender right now? How do you feel right now? Is there feelings of resistance to anything? And yeah, maybe in your story, maybe in what's going on in the life situation, but literally in just this moment, as you're listening to us, is there any resistance to any? Is there anything in the present moment that requires resistance, or can it just be? And so practicing surrender when things are calm and not so intense is really valuable to preparing and kind of strengthening the muscle when things do get more intense and more of a life situation is like really in your face. For example, a pain body. Somebody's in a pain body. Can you surrender to them being in a pain body and not wanting them to be any different? It's so much a practice, and it's always practicing in this moment. You just have to catch when you're not in surrender and catch it and go, oh, okay, I'm resisting something here. I'm not accepting something in this present moment, whether it's myself or somebody else or the current events of the world or, who knows, trillion possibilities. But you have to catch that feeling of resistance, that feeling of non-surrender. And interestingly, when you can catch the non-surrender and then be with it, breathe into it, you are allowing the non-surrender to be there. And that is surrender. Allowing is surrender. So often people get stuck because they can't accept a certain situation, something that's just really upsets them. They're just I can't surrender to this. I can't accept this. It's okay, well then step one step higher and accept the fact that you can accept this. You can still get to this spacious freedom if you accept your non-acceptance, where you surrender to your resistance and say, oh, okay, I'm having resistance right now. Okay. And it starts to dissolve a bit. And it's just a practice type of thing, It's not something that just clicks and then is permanently embedded in our in our psyche. It's something you just have to keep catching and catching in every present moment.
This person has awareness of sort of where it's coming from, maybe because the general teachings or worldly teachings focus on try harder. It's true. And it's not just here in the West, it's in the East too, this whole productivity climb, constantly on a vertical climb, or you're a failure, when life is, it's here we go, riding the waves. It would be nice if this person were seeing one of us, we would probably say, give us an example of something that you're struggling with surrendering. And this is the same topic as forgiveness too. This comes up in the same vein. I'm struggling with the idea of forgiveness. So this person has wonderful insight. I want to encourage you to keep seeing where the thoughts, you won't try hard, you won't give up, you will fail. You see those thoughts, that's the story making mind. Or the story making mind that wants to say that the experience is just, here I am failing again, unable to do it. Gentle, gentle as we go. When we're able, as Ryan was saying, to accept the non-acceptance, to accept that, he's doing is leading you into your body, as Poonam says, which is where we experience every moment and let every moment that's passed die. And it's a beautiful liberation. And the feeling is that there's no resistance, an experience of grace and lightness. And you'll notice that those same patterns don't return again. They will return if we decide to hang on to them. Then we'll have the same, we'll get offered the same challenge again and again until we are able to see it. And then one day you'll see that it's just not coming up anymore. It's not there anymore, which is the work we're doing. There it is.
I feel, when they say trying harder, you won't try hard or you give up. So I know Vlad is a huge fan of Dr. Deepak Chopra. Initially, I used to, even before I knew Eckhart, so this is before 2010, I was reading that book that Vlad loves, which is the 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. And one of the laws is, I will receive maximal benefit with minimal effort. Now, what does that mean? How can I achieve? And it took me years and years and finding Eckhart and knowing of Eckhart's teachings. And especially in the past 2-3 years, I know Parker's been through it. Ryan must be through it as well. That when we have that depth of presence, things happen. There is no effort. There is no hard work. There is no effort involved. Everything is very, very effortless. Things just happen to you. I'll tell you one very simple example. So we were doing B.Live, right, Parker? And then, I didn't like the interface because you cannot see who it is and you cannot respond to them on that interface. So I punched in YouTube and I looked in my feed, and in the bottom, there was some church person that had, how do you do Facebook Live on Zoom? The video was right there. How does the universe present it? Right? It is that effortless, Neelam. Work on your presence. Practice, practice, practice. Do your meditation, do the breath work. Parker has so many videos on breath work. There are different techniques to the breath. There's a difference in doing the 4-count breath and when you suspend, and that stillness and that suspension of the 4-count breath. That's the point you need to reach, is that stillness. And it's like such a beautiful experience. Like, I don't want to do anything in this world other than meditate. I just do it because it's fun that, okay, well, we learned something out of our experiences. Let me share. I started a Facebook group and now it is where it is. But it is a beautiful experience. So enjoy that experience. Enjoy that suspension of breath. Enjoy just every present moment. Be in a state of joy. Acknowledge appreciation, gratitude for every present moment. Gratitude that Ryan and Parker are here and offering this advice to all of us, right? So that is what life is about. Present moment to present moment. Surrender every moment. Uncompromising yes. That is such a beautiful statement. Uncompromising yes to this present moment and let it flow very effortlessly. Because when you're doing harder and hard work, that means the thinking mind has taken over. And once the thinking mind has taken over, what we create out of the thinking mind will be destroyed. That is the law of polarity. The positive already consists the unmanifested negative. When we do anything out of the ego, that is what it is, that we are creating something, but then the negative is created too. And that's why that depth of presence, the deep I, is needed. When we imbue it with consciousness, when we offer our action up to divinity and let go, no fruit of the action.
Mhm.
I offer the action, let go, see how it flows like water.
I want to mention something. If you've been self-isolating and haven't spent any time in nature, where, and especially if you're in an urban area, I would suggest it's so much simpler if you've had a very active mind, as Poonam's described, to move into nature. Yesterday, I'll share, I went to a park, and I hadn't been to a park, or I have been on walks, but not to a big park in a long time. And I was walking down a path at sunset through an apricot orchard, 200-year-old apricot orchard with the beautiful, and the stillness in this space was magnificent. It was so still. And also to remember that that stillness is always there. It's always been there. It's always accessible. It's like the sun. It's not telling you you've not been good enough. I noticed there were some more questions. I haven't seen them, but I noticed that there was a few more questions. And this is tiny baby Kumar, and he is saying hi to everyone. He seems to want to get up here.
This is what Neelam responded with, law of least effort. Yeah, I'm so trying to make connection.
Well, not least effort. I'm still trying to make connections in my life. It's suggested by the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is such a beautiful read. Stephen Mitchell, Byron Katie's husband, wrote a version where he uses the feminine pronoun a lot. And it's beautiful, and it's beautifully read. If you can get the audio book, I highly recommend it. It's incredible. That and the Gita are all, they seem like they're spoken to at that time when they were written. It seems like they were written for leadership, for leadership. In these days that we're living in, it's for all of us. Wouldn't you say, Ryan? Do you like the Tao?
Oh yeah, I love both of them.
Me too.
Very much.
So I noticed someone had a question about relationship. Let's see where it is. What's the best way to stay present? Please come to our live meditations. They're on Fridays and Sundays, not every Friday and not every Sunday, but we post them and pin them at the top of this page. And in that group, every single time we meet, someone brings some beautiful, wise pointer for, it's like having a tool bag when you're working on this. I had it working with someone who has a complaining mind. Their mother spoke almost completely in complaints for them, and they seem like they inherited this complaining mind. And what's working for them to move into the present moment when the complaining mind works is to do some deep breathing and then to smile as they do the breathing. You cannot complain in your mind and smile at the same time. So it depends upon what your circumstances are. There are many tools. Your breath practice, observing what is, listening to your voice, listening to every syllable that leaves your mouth, listening to another person without knowing what they're going to say next, listening completely with an open and curious heart. There's walking meditations. there in a heart. What that does is it lays the groundwork to invite the present moment in, so that we're not seeking a state of consciousness. We're allowing that state of consciousness to arise. But Ryan's here with us today, so I know Ryan may have some really helpful tips on remaining present.
Oh yeah, definitely. Specifically on the topic of if you do find your mind's complaining a bit, it is also important to catch the specific thought patterns that are the complaining patterns when they're happening. So you've got to call yourself out, whether it's a judgment or it's some kind of complaint, or, just like, oh, that shouldn't be that way, or this person shouldn't be this way. You got to catch when it's speaking within you and the feeling that's coming with that thought. And you got to call that out to a degree. You have to bring awareness to it. Once you bring awareness to it, then you also have to remind yourself that this pattern you're hearing, this pattern you're recognizing within yourself is not you. It is your conditioning. It came from something in your past. And as is true for everyone. And so the person, like if I think you had mentioned it was their mom that was the main source, they believed, of the complaining state. Well, recognize that not only are you not that pattern because it came from your mother the majority of the time, but even for her, the same thing applies. It's not her either. It's conditioning that was passed down to her. And you can take that on and on and on through the generations. And it turns out no one's really guilty for these negative cycles. It's just part of the evolutionary process. And we're learning how to use the mind without it driving us crazy. So that's an important thing, to bring forgiveness to the sources of our own patterns that are driving us crazy, and also understand them in a sense that it dissolves the personalness, it dissolves the seriousness in a sense. And then you can really get free of it, because once you really know, like, okay, there's that sneaky, complaint, and you catch it, and there's no sense of self in it, then it no longer has any power, and it really starts to dissolve then. And the more you catch it and dissolve that power by recognizing it as conditioning and not you, the less it comes up, or the less intense it comes up the next time. And this is so much of the practice, whether it's the complaining mind or any form of pain body. You got to catch it and recognize, this is not me. This is conditioning.
Yes, that's such, Ryan, yes. And I love the way you always highlight to not take it personally. That's for the first questioner about reactivity in another, it's such a beautiful thing to recognize that it's not, that it's just this, it's not who we really are. It's not who you are. And so we peel these layers, but these layers dissolve effortlessly. Like Poonam was saying, to the what were you saying, Poonam, with the Deepak, the path of least resistance? What was that?
We achieve maximal benefit with minimal effort. That's the second chakra. Like the lowest is I'm in alignment with the action is in alignment with cosmic law or planetary intelligence, whatever you may call it. That's the Muladhara. But the second one is I achieve maximal benefit with, so if we raised our vibrational frequency a little bit, then I achieve maximal benefit. But I did not realize that until the past few years, what it really, really meant. He does not explain properly that it is present power that gives you that power.
Yes.
For
and also to not turn presence into a thing to be achieved, and to not worry about being present tomorrow, just right now, just in this moment. And it's such a simple thing. It's such a simple way of being. Recognize that your mind may want to use the same tools, unconscious tools, for achievement. on the spiritual path, but we also have learned, all of us have learned, that it's a completely different set of tools. There's no efforting and trying and flogging yourself. And if we're not, someone mentioned that they were teaching, if we're not offering ourselves that kind of completely without condition love and grace and compassion, then it won't flow from us naturally. That's where the mind comes from, that says that the other person, something's wrong with the other person, this person is doing this. But when we're breathing, let's say we wake up in the morning and we're doing deep breathing and we are infusing every cell of our body, so with unconditional love and gratitude, this miraculous body that we're inhabiting, and our heart is soft, it's full, it's present. The present moment is a simple and easy space to be in, and then we can offer that to others. And this is something that,
go ahead, Parker. Then once you finish, I'll tell something about complaining. Go ahead.
Okay. So Eckhart had a very, and I think there are a lot of people in this space of friends, in this group, that have had a very sharp and deep dissolving of unconsciousness when they were introduced to his work, or maybe another person's work, where again and again and again. So now maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, someone may see something come up. But in the beginning, lots of things dissolved. We had so many what Oprah called aha moments. And Eckhart had that as well. But Eckhart wasn't just completely free all at once. He was free for a while. But he was also handed his challenges. He said he had like a dozen roommates and maybe 2 or 3 of them were conscious. Imagine living with 9 different people over a few years span and they're unconscious. You're living with them. You're living with all the unconscious decision making. You're living with their distorted views of things. And he didn't know, he was seeking, what should I do? I probably should be doing something. So there was still some stuff there. So he's all of us, including Eckhart, all the same, all on this path, all moving in sometimes a very deep state of consciousness. Sometimes it comes up a little bit and then it deepens again, and perhaps it goes away completely for a long time, and then maybe something comes back up. So it reminds me of when people say, when someone says, "Oh, I'm fully enlightened," but then you're not fully enlightened. It's a fierce dedication to showing up for what's there in ourselves, and not moving out of our body, staying in our body like Poonam says, and staying rested in the present moment. And then when we're not, when we find ourselves 6 feet away in the future or drugged down in the past, then we bring ourselves home, and gently and tenderly, here we are back again. So the complaining mind,
I think somebody asked Eckhart whether he has no negativity anymore. And he said, the day that I say I don't have negativity, the ego has come back. So we have to realize we are that one consciousness, and that one consciousness is creating both the negative and positive. So the negative and positive always exists within us. It's just that the people that are more awakened have more presence, that the negativity is dissolving, but it is always there, because there's just one consciousness. There's nothing more. There's no devil, there is no hell. It is the same one consciousness that created the negative so that we could see the positive. How can you see white if there was no darkness, right? The contrast has to be there. You have to suffer to know that I want peace. I want peace. How are you going to ask for peace if you don't suffer, right? So going back to the complaining, one of the most, and this is why I absolutely adore Eckhart, and I have not moved to any other spiritual teacher other than Eckhart, is he knows the ego so well. And in School of Awakening, in the module called Teacher Called Suffering, he talks about that complaining is also, somebody is complaining. Like if I say, oh, look at the weather, it's so gray, it's raining, and now it's like sticky, humid weather. Even in that little instance, I'm putting the weather down. I may not be complaining about a person. I may not be complaining about, so even putting the weather down, what he says is, and this is the sweetest thing, if we can, one day we'd make a video and capture that, Parker. He says, you're not successful, right? You don't have a successful life. You, and this is the key, how the ego snuck in, right? You don't have a successful life, so you're not feeding your this lack of self-esteem, right? Um, and you're not successful, you're not doing well, you don't have a good job, you're not doing well. So guess what are you going to use to strengthen your ego? The complaining. So that, when I see that, and if somebody I see, okay, they are not very successful in life, but then they complain about the politics, the politicians, the whatever the government is doing, their state is doing, the school is doing. I mean, they constantly out there posting, right? What Eckhart says, the hive mind, they're constantly posting on Facebook. So that, and when that person is not successful, they have a sense of lack and incompleteness, they're complaining, that becomes very seductive. Like the ego does not want to let go because it's strengthening itself through the complaining. And it's so easy. You don't have, you can be a homeless person and sit and complain, right? You don't have to be a billionaire to sit and complain. You can be a homeless person and complain, right? About the greedy wealthy. What does he say in the book, Greedy Wealthy? The exploitation, what happened to me in my past, what happened to me a minute ago. So that part, that you don't have anything, and one thing that will strengthen your ego is the complaining, is it like blows my mind that he had that nuance, that this person is using this aspect of their life to strengthen their ego. And the moment you let go of the complaining, presence, the light will shine through. That's all that was needed. Drop the complaining and the light will shine through. You'll know your presence power, and that presence will attract. The law of attraction, abundance will come in. So my advice to anybody is, first get into your presence. That's why I keep saying practice, 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 presence, 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 because presence is the key. The moment you have presence, resentments drop, grievances drop, complaining drops. All these are just like hot potato. You drop them, and look at how much abundance you bring into your life, is what I
Yeah.
would say.
Yes. You know, Krishnamurti talks a lot, and I know this is an Eckhart group, but Krishnamurti was one of Eckhart's teachers, and he defines violence, all the little ways that we are violent with ourselves and each other, and the complaining mind is a form of self-violence. I mean, it's, and you can feel it. If even if it's building an ego, it feels like it's resistance, and it is a feeling that, or excitability, or doing things for excitement, is like a superficial feelings of anxiety. Excitement still creates anxiety feeling. It's so completely different than the feeling of being at ease in each moment, in this moment.
I have to tell
Poonam,
you
thank you
something
so
funny.
much.
I have to tell you something funny about
Yeah.
Krishnamurti. I was watching one of his videos on YouTube in India, very long, it's black and white, the video. And somebody gets up and says, what about the soul? What about the Atman? What about this? And Krishnamurti says, how do you know there is a soul? Because the questioner says, oh, it's Ramana Maharshi said that, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said that, he said some gurus. And Krishnamurti says, forget about those gentlemen. He like totally takes Ramana Maharshi, which we revere Ramana Maharshi, right? Like in India, especially South India, we revere. He says, forget about those gentlemen. How do you know? Because he's taking you to the experience of what does it mean to be your soul, right?
Yeah.
Parker posted a question. Thank you.
I keep chasing people for validating me. Nice insight, and that's from Cha Fam. Hey, Cha Fam, hello. So I keep chasing people for validating me. You can see it now, and so there may sometimes be a realization about what it is, what that pattern is about. There's a big difference between having that realization and trying to tweeze something apart. It's sort of like the lady with the mother that was complaining, and from her mother, we probably have to trace that way back to forever to know where that came from. So chasing people for validating, to be seen. So usually what we're doing with other people is what we need from ourselves. So if we're chasing someone for validation, oftentimes we really want to be seen ourselves. And there's a difference between being seen or needing to be seen, needing someone to tell you that you're okay and that you're loved. It's a human, it's part of living horizontally as human beings to want to connect with other people. Well, if we find that we're seeking it or we're chasing it, you have that insight, and now you can drop it. It's perfectly okay to just drop it. And we don't drop it conceptually. We can drop it conceptually, but when we really reap the benefit is when we're in the midst of it. When we are in the midst of it and we can see that this person is not affirming for me, not understanding my good impulse, not, or someone saying, I don't, I need this person to value me. I need this person to tell me that I matter. If you're coming from a place of presence and you're coming from a full spot, and that requires no situation, not another person, not having a baby, not having better food or a better home, nothing out here is ever going to fill that a void of feeling that we're not enough, that you are already whole. You are already whole. And if we move into that space of the tenderness, bringing tenderness into that gnawing want for validation, see that, hold it tenderly, and we give ourselves what it is we think that the world is depriving from us. And that's really all we need is to sit so clearly and so fully in our bodies in each moment so that nothing is required out here. There are many different angles to this topic. Hey, Ryan, we haven't heard from you on this topic. Validation.
Well, you said a lot of great pointers there. Yeah, it's certainly a good one to pay attention to. And again, about just being real, being honest. If it's there, it's there. You know, no judgment of ourselves if we catch ourselves in these various patterns. Something that I'd be curious of is when you say, I keep chasing people for validating me, what me are you referring to? Are you looking for validation on your story, your human story self of like, I don't know, of being successful economically, or I don't know, popularity or something? Are you, what kind of validation are you looking for? And at what level is that validation? Because any sense of me that's on the surface, whether it's your human physical body, or it's your economic status, or I don't know, relationships or goals being achieved, all of that technically is on surface. And it's all beautiful, but it's not really who you are. Who you really are goes much, much deeper than anything in this human life. And when you really get in touch with that level of me, the idea of needing validation is no longer exists, because like who you really are goes way beyond any form of lack. um, so I think it'd be really interesting to sit with that. I keep chasing people for validating me. Look at the sense of self. Where is the sense of self? The I that keeps chasing, and the people that need to be validating me. And remember too that these people you're going to for validation you're going to their surface self. You're not going to their you're probably not seeking their validation from the depths of who they are, which would also be presence of God, because that very presence of God would never see lack in the first place. It would be unconditional love. It would see you as already being perfectly valid, regardless of your story. So, also keep in mind that if we're chasing other people on the surface level, we're chasing not only from a place of lack, but we're also chasing others that are in a place of lack. So it's kind of a never-ending game.
Poonam, thank you for putting this comment from Kelly Wellens. And she said, when you stop yourself from complaining, it begins to break the attachment to externalizing and validating the ego through externalizing our need to control through judging. Ooh, that's a mouthful here, but it's a beautiful and wise observation. And I'm kind of a big fan of correct language, because it means something different to stop yourself from complaining than to observe the complaining mind. If we're observing it, then it just stops on its own, right? Then we can see it. But if we don't see it, or if we bring a hammer to that show, then we're not dissolving that complaining mind. But it begins to dissolve the attachment. For validation, you go through externalizing, or need to control through judging. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing, and a very deep observation, to control through judging. Yeah, thinking that we know. That's another favorite form of the ego. Oh, I know. And because if we have a narrative that suits us, then if the ego has a narrative that suits the ego, right, it can continue to build on that story until it has a whole skyscraper story made of concrete. And God, don't let anybody tell us that it might be different. And what's great about this work is that this is work that we all do ourselves. This isn't work that other people can really come in and do the work for you. This is done in the moments that they arise. What a great sense.
Christina says that she loves the energy. She says it is so good to see the three of you feel the energy, what they're sharing, So she loves the energy. There's one thing I wanted to say about chasing people for validating me. One of the things that Eckhart says is, as long as you're in this physical body, you're one half of a whole. So you're either female or male. So you're always going to look for another, right? That's like a natural tendency, that you're going to look for another to fulfill, like, because the half is a half. So as Parker said, the wholeness comes. So the stream of consciousness that is flowing through us is both feminine and masculine. It is yin and yang. So the more we go into the depth of presence, there is no more seeking. There's no more, because that's fulfilling. The joy of being is joy of being conscious. And once we are in that joy of being, if we see a partner or see another opposite, somebody of the opposite sex, or whoever we are attracted to, then we are attracted to, and the validation stops, because we in ourselves, we are so full of love that nothing else is needed. That alignment with beingness is all that was needed. And that's what the wanting to, I want people to validate me. The wanting is showing so I always show this thing. So here is beingness. This is our inner beingness. This is us. Actually, when we are pretty unconscious, which maybe 10-15 years I was unconscious, so 10-15 years ago. So we're down here, right? We are vibrating at this low energy level. This is the lack and incompleteness. This is the discontent, the boredom, the anger, the frustration. So what we are trying to do is, this is our inner beingness, and we are trying to bring our vibrational energy up to inner beingness. Once we are aligned with inner beingness, what Eckhart calls presence, awareness, um, Sadhguru calls feel the life force that you are, right? When we are aligned with our inner beingness, nothing else is needed. Like nothing else is needed other than that solitude or that stillness. And as Byron Katie says, God spare me from seeking love, approval, and appreciation from another. Amen, right? The day that you don't need the love, approval, and appreciation is the day that you know you're there.
Yes, I think we lost Ryan.
I think we should end, Parker. I need to go do my dishes as well. It's like almost an hour. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Parker. This was
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah,
Thanks to
it really
Ryan
was.
too.
Thanks,
He's not here.
everyone. I want to make a couple quick announcements. When is the next live meditation? Poonam? Is it
On Friday,
Friday? Is this
22nd.
Friday?
Yeah.
Okay, so this Friday, and look, it's pinned at the top of this page. And I also want to say that we are putting together some weekend workshops, maybe some digital weekend workshops, and maybe in a way event where we can deepen our stillness, deepen that still space, and to widen that space so that we're experiencing more peace than not, or maybe even total peace. So I thank everyone for being here with us today, and for watching, and for your questions and the wisdom that you've offered here. And thank you, Poonam, for your wisdom. And Ryan, wherever you may be, thank you so much. And Poonam, your hair is just magnificent. It looks
Thank you.
beautiful. The self-isolation
The
matte
white.
haircut. It's lovely.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Parker.
Bye.